The video was called Mandela Effect versus Deja Vu, False Memories We All Share, which, surprise hit. I did not think people would care that much about the video, but boy was it engaging. Enough that I'm making now, follow-up spin-off videos of it, such as this. We're gonna look at a comment that I had received on here. And it was where I was talking to a viewer here. He was talking about something he thought was happening and it wasn't. And so my response, and if you've been watching my videos for a long time, you know that one of my catchphrases is, and here it is, I put on here, anything you believe is true in your mind. Let me say that again. Anything you believe is true in your mind. I believe that. I believe that for everybody. If you're convinced in your mind that that's truth, that that's reality, it is. It is your reality. And it's nearly impossible to be convinced otherwise. Identity protective cognition. Google that. You'll probably find me. With that being said, the response I got back from the viewer said this. That would be, okay, in response to anything you believe is true in your mind, here was his response. He said, that would be bad advice for a guy with a mental illness. To which I responded, yet that is how most people live their lives, like the delusion, I'm a good person. Because what happens if you believe that you're a good person? You believe, I deserve good things. I don't deserve bad things. Why do bad things happen to good people? I'm a good person. You can't talk to me that way. You can't treat me that way because I'm a good person and I deserve better than that. Therefore, I'm being very clear. I'm not a good person. I never want to be in that category. So anyway, I want to address that. So the fact that people with mental illnesses, so he's saying that would be bad advice for a guy with a mental illness. Well, I'm not saying that it's advice. I'm not saying anything you believe is true in your mind. I'm not saying that's advice. I'm saying that that's reality. I'm saying that that's how everyone is. So here's the thing. I have a massive amount of beliefs and perspectives about how things work in the world. To me, that is my truth. It's not necessarily a fact. And so with billions of people in the world, we have billions of people that have truths in their minds. And a lot of that truth is fact, but a lot of it's not. And I always like to make fun of this saying, well, don't you think if I were wrong, I'd know it? Of course you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't know it, because we don't want to go around believing things we know are not true, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be truth. We want to have truth. We're on a journey of truth. And whether you want to have beliefs or not, you do. You do have beliefs. Prime example, abortion, right? I mean, I'm a libertarian, so I'm not on one extreme like so many Americans are. But ultimately, when it comes to abortion, here's what I see. People who believe that abortion is not immoral. And notice how I worded that. I'm not talking about abortion being legal or not. And same sense as marriage, gay marriage being legal or not. People get all caught up on whether, for all those years, even Bill Clinton and also Obama in his first term, they voted against gay marriage. People get so caught up in the legal status of things. But ultimately, as we're looking at abortion, okay, whether it's legal or not, the fact is we have beliefs about whether or not it's morally okay. So ultimately, for people who are saying it's a woman's body, abortion shouldn't be illegal. Ultimately what they're saying, well, I believe abortion is not immoral. Meanwhile, and I'm one of these, well, again, I'm in the middle. See, for me, I don't get caught up so much in abortion being legal or not, because honestly, for the most part, it is. And even as that gets reversed, it's just going to go right back to the concept of, well, let's reverse the law now, because now a liberal is and a Democrat. It's just going to get reversed. That ultimately is not even solving the problem, just making something legal or not. It's a matter of these people believe that abortion is immoral. These people do not believe it is immoral. So for me, I'm not caught up in the law. I'm saying, well, I do believe abortion is immoral. We can argue all kinds of stuff about the law at this point, even though it's been legal for a long time. But ultimately, morally, how do we feel about abortion? Either you believe it's moral, or at least amoral, like meaning it doesn't have a moral status. You're at least you're that. If you're ultimately, pro-choice. If you're pro-life, then you believe abortion is immoral. I believe that. But again, I'm not so focused on making it, getting caught up in the law, because the law is somewhat arbitrary. It's a matter of people's hearts and what they believe. And it's also a matter of, often the people who focus so much on making abortion illegal again, what they're not focusing on is what happens when those same children who were not aborted become born and they're part of society. Are they being loved? Are they being taken care of? Are they being raised in poverty? Are they ultimately growing up just to end up in prison? Or, and this is a deep, dark thought, or are they being guided to end up in the military, again, libertarian, but are they ultimately going to end up going overseas, believing that they're fighting for our country, ultimately all because of some kind of political distraction that the United States is involved in with the Middle East, because we always need to have an enemy, and it helps when that enemy is especially of a different religion. Of course, before it was Islam in the Middle East, it was the Cold War, and it was basically the lack of religion, but if it's not specifically religious, then often it's a different race. And because Americans are taught, defend your country, believe. So then what happens is this boy that wasn't aborted, raised in poverty, amazingly never got into any kind of crime or anything, but he's like, I want to do something good with my life. Let me go in the military. He goes over there and believes he's defending our country, loses his life. And it's hard to process that, but that's not how it is. Vietnam? Are we sure that what happened in Vietnam is not happening now? Do you know about the Vietnam draft? How if you were not white, specifically if you were black and or lower income, you were more likely to be drafted? So what we were doing in America is we were taking the poor and we were taking the minorities, drafting them to Vietnam just to lose their life for this idea that we're fighting for freedom. It still happens now without the draft, but it still happens. So for me, yes, I believe abortion is immoral, but I don't believe the law in itself is necessarily going to change people's mind. Ultimately, what happens is people try to change each other's mind through a law, through some kind of restriction. And it's ultimately a heart issue. So here's what I'm saying. This isn't actually a video about abortion. And even if it was, I couldn't put in the title. If I put abortion in the title, then YouTube makes it where it'll show up less and I won't be able to monetize it. So that's why you won't see me talk about that in the title. But I share that very specific example to point this out. The people who think abortion is permittable in the sense of morality, that it's either moral or at least amoral, that it's okay, it's very easy for them to look at the people who think that abortion is immoral, that it is wrong. It's easy for either of those camps to look at each other and think, well, that person's crazy. Well, that person's crazy. Well, that person's crazy. Well, that person. They think each other are crazy. But that's one example of how anything we believe in our minds is true. Anything you believe is true in your mind. We take what we see as truth and we make it fact. And then for the other side that doesn't agree with us, we demonize them. And we make laws against them and what they believe, because we think that they're the crazy ones. And sometimes I am the crazy one. I'm crazy for having this YouTube channel and talking about such deep things, but I like to be challenged. I like to be engaged in these kind of conversations. I don't want to talk about sports. I don't want to talk about weather. I don't want to talk about anything on social media. This stuff is the stuff this is where I'm at in life, in my emotional intelligence pyramid. This is where I'm at. I need conversations like this to exist. So yes, anything you believe is true in your mind, even if you're crazy. Even if you think those people are crazy, even if they think you're crazy. As long as you believe it in your mind, it is true. And it's going to take a whole lot to convince you that it's not. Because that's identity protective cognition. And when someone tries to convince you otherwise against what you believe, no matter how much evidence, especially a lot of evidence, it only reinforces what you already believe because you feel physically attacked. Not just mentally, but physically your body reacts in a way that you feel attacked. So you have to prove them wrong. And the more facts they provide, the more you're going to fight back. Anything you believe in your mind is true. In your mind. Not necessarily in reality. Your comments belong right here.